Okay, I'm going to speak now. Can you hear me okay? Testing, testing audio. Testing audio. Good. Okay, testing. Um, okay. Okay, I'm asking you a question. Yeah. Should I leave this open or just should I leave this open or just sign off and come back on at 9? Pancho. Start at 9:05. Okay. So if you want to explain, will I hear some kind of introduction or music or anything, or just 9:05? I just start talking and presenting. Okay. Now, where do I see questions, or like when I'm done presenting, I go back to, I guess I see comment moderation on the left hand side of the Facebook screen. Question: should I log off and come on at 9 so we have a cleaner, so I can delete this current video and then we have a cleaner recording? Or do you want me just to stay on here until 9?
Grandpa.
Hey, Marty.
Look at my shirt.
You're all dressed up, man.
It's my work shirt.
That's good. That's good. You got work to do today?
Is the pool still out?
The power's still out over there. They think till like noon. So I have to speak. Guess what? I'm speaking on a live feed here that goes all the way to Chile. So I have to give a speech, and people are gonna tune in at 9 a.m.
I have to get on a call too.
Okay. Good luck with your call, all right, dude? We have great neighbors here in New Jersey that let me. We have a power outage on our block, and we have great neighbors who are letting me use their place. Hey, puppy. Hey, buddy. Okay, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. And I thank you for the invite from Pancho, my classmate in the Berlin School of Creative Leadership. I'm signing on here from Montclair, New Jersey, and I want to talk to you today about information quality, a concept I think we should be thinking about. This is myself. I'm Paul Glatter. I'm a journalist. I'm a journalism professor, and I do entrepreneurial things. I'm based here in the New York City area, and one of the things I do is train young journalists to be reporters and other professionals in the media space. So here is a picture from Prague in 2017, our inaugural class of the European Journalism Institute. It's one of the nonprofit training organizations I'm involved with, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. What I want to talk to you about and think about with you is traditional media has been disrupted. As it withers, we have to think about the future of news and where we get quality information. And I want to propose three major emerging trends in sort of the future of news and quality information is, let's start from the bottom. Big tech companies have disrupted a lot of media, including news journalism, and they are therefore getting more involved in trying to save or fix what was broken. So a few examples of that, we see Amazon founder Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post with his own money and is investing, trying to save and make that news organization thrive. Seems to be working, actually. The founder of Salesforce, Benioff, bought Time magazine, similar model to Bezos. We also see Apple, Google, Twitter, a lot of the big big tech companies, Facebook, trying to get involved a little more into the news industry, helping the news industry in ways that they didn't in the past. So that's one big dynamic. And I'm not going to talk much more about that dynamic. I want to talk more about points 1 and 2. We're seeing on point 1, we're seeing a lot of nonprofit news organizations starting up around the country in the United States and in other parts of the world to report news and information in ways that the traditional media can't, when the traditional media is laying off journalists, seeing its advertising and audiences decline or change. So a real positive, important trend is nonprofit news organizations. And I'm going to give you an example of that, a case study of sorts, with religionunplugged.com in a moment. The other trend is startups and innovation. When we see creative destruction, like Joseph Schumpeter, the economist, talked about, we have to create new models, new ways to make money, deliver quality news and information. So I think this question is really important for everyone to think about. I find myself talking with students about this quite a bit. Where do you get your news and information? Where do you find out, sports scores? Where do you find out what's happening in your local government with, we call it in the US, we use the term taxpayer money. How's our money being spent on our schools, our roads, for police, fire, military? What are the dynamics of crime? With the current George Floyd protests in the United States, what's really happening on the streets if we're not out there ourselves? Where do we learn this information? How good is the quality of information that we're taking in? It seems a lot of us, forget where it comes from, that someone has to vet and clean and sort of verify the information that's happening out in the world and present that to people. Traditionally, as we know, newspapers were the place where a lot of quality information was delivered. Paul Starr, a Princeton sociologist, wrote in the New Republic magazine, and by the way, Paul Starr wrote a massive history on the creation of the media. He wrote this: more than any other medium, newspapers have been our eyes on the state, our check on private abuses, our civic alarm systems. And it highlights the importance of that medium. So let's just look at two charts here to see what's happening in the state of the news business. If we look at newspaper newsroom employment from 2004, we had, and this is in the US, newspapers employed more than 60,000 people, and it went down to 40,000 by 2015. I think it's gone down drastically to closer to 20 or 30,000 now. So we've seen an absolute decline of the number of people who are employed to report on quality news and information. If we look at this chart, these are both from Pew Research, which I believe is one of the best research organizations in the United States. We look at revenue. Where did these news organizations get their money? So the red line shows us the advertising, how it was a real peak, 1980, 90, 2000s, and then it collapsed off a cliff as technology, Web 2.0, social media started taking off. And meanwhile, on the positive side, circulation, which means the people paying for subscriptions, sort of the Netflix model, right? The idea of people buying a newspaper subscription, that's actually been growing, and that's kind of a bright spot in the replacement model. But you can see it's not replacing the big revenue that the industry made, the billions and billions that just disappeared when advertising dropped. And I believe this because we're doing this with Embrax, and maybe there's a lot of people in advertising. These trends are familiar to you, but I wanted to, again, show you what we're seeing. And as we know, another dynamic here is that in general, again, this is from Pew Research, I'm defining the generations labels on the right side. And then on the left side, you see the main point here that media organizations have to cater on social media to younger generations who are tuning in via Facebook Live or other Facebook feeds, etc. And at the same time, serving older generations who are tuning into traditional TV news, local TV news, for example, older traditional mediums. So where have we come from? Let's take a quick walk through some history before we think about where we're going. I mean, we know quality of information started back when people could speak in the ancient world, and people, instead of writing books, they would tell tales, and eventually those were taken down, like Odysseus, and kept for us, or the Odyssey, right? So Demosthenes said of his fellow Athenians, they thirsted after news because they went around framing tales. There was the oral tradition, but similar in ancient Greece, we've always shared news. Anthropologists, when they look at tribes anywhere, realize that news is a major part of people's lives, and it's a protection. Hunters share information on where the hunting was good or where the dangers were, and so it's both entertainment and enjoyable, but it's also crucial to one's life. As we got paper, that was 0.5 part of media, and this I'm kind of melding Professor Dan Gilmore from Arizona State, his walk through technologies. At the Berlin School, we also heard from Bob Garfield from On the Media, and his timeline lined up a bit as well with this. So we went from paper, scribes writing down by ink and pen, to Gutenberg, the movable type, Media 1.0. This was a big revolution because you could print in mass, right? One document over and over instead of copying it by hand. And this was in Mainz in Germany. So the printing press, big step forward. 1.5, people point to the telegraph. Now, media could move as fast as a horse could run. We could send messages over across the ocean, for example, much quicker than if you sailed a ship to deliver the news. There's a wonderful book about this, the Victorian Internet, it's called. And it kind of parallels the development of the telegraph to the development of the internet and how it was similar. And then as newspapers really had been around for a couple of hundred years in experimental forms, but we saw a flourishing of newspapers in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. You might call them Media 1.9. It was a leap forward. There was a professionalization as time went on. Real standards and ethics emerged around how we do journalism in newspapers. Then we got broadcast, radio, TV, another big forward, a 2.0, a dramatic move, right? Now we have more senses that we could involve in understanding news. Then we get to the 20th century model, internet technology, Media 3.0. That was a huge leap from 2.0 to 3.0. All of a sudden, we went to a new model of manufacturing and distribution. As Dan Gilmore put it, this is subsuming everything that came before. It created a 21st century information flow. But it raised questions as we've gotten the internet. What is journalism? Is the New York Times journalism? Blogs, BBC, BuzzFeed, Quartz, Medium, Twitter. Are YouTube channels, do they do journalism? What about advocacy journalism happening by various groups with interests that don't have maybe their standards and ethics around journalism explained? So we've got a lot of new questions. The public especially may be confused more and more as to what is journalism, and maybe less willing in some parts to pay for it. So we're considering the next leap forward. The mobile web changed journalism in a big way. We could discuss in depth all of these, but we're going to keep moving. Artificial intelligence, a lot of people are thinking that AI, there's a way we can cover local news and, company news, sports news with robots doing some of the work, maybe better than humans. And so humans kind of assisting in news and information delivery. And we're not there yet. We're not seeing, I think, we're seeing starting signs of this, but we have a long way to go. Can drones, bots, the ubiquity of cameras help us understand and have quality of information better? Or are they more susceptible to hoaxes and tampering, deep fakes? A lot of these new technologies bring great promise or hope, but also some dangers and liabilities. Crowdsourcing is an idea we've tried and continue to use. Really, Twitter is a great crowdsourcing tool for information. So is Instagram. Voice recognition software, transcription software. We have many exciting possibilities as we head forward. And I want to talk to you now and walk you through 2 case studies of things I'm working on regarding the entrepreneurial future. So again, nonprofit. I'm going to show you one nonprofit news organization and one for-profit startup that are trying to participate, that I'm trying to introduce to the industry to help with the disruption. So the first organization project I'm going to talk to you about is the parent company, the parent nonprofit is called the Media Project. And it's based here in New York. And this is the front of our website on themediaproject.org. And we equip journalists to cover religion. That's the focus. We are a professional network of journalists, and there's our website and our Twitter handle. We've got more than 1,200 member journalists all around the world, Africa, India, Chile, by the way, other parts of Latin America, Asia. We have, a lot of Facebook fans. Maybe I'll repost this video if Pancho wants me to, or lets me on some of our Facebook pages. And so we're a network is one thing we are. And the second thing is we're a nonprofit news platform and an online magazine, which is at religionunplugged.com and at religionmag on Twitter. And so this network of people can file stories to us from around the world, which we pay for. And our goal is to publish 10 to 15 stories or items per week. We believe in the slow journalism movement. We don't need to cover every single religion story happening in the world, but look for one that's at least one original story that's unique, that adds to the body of knowledge, that provides that also can provide expert reporting as well as expert analysis and commentary for the quality of information we're providing. So we started this 1 year ago. We've been growing dramatically, doubling last year and again this year to 40,000 average unique visitors per month and growing. We've got a podcast channel, YouTube channel, an Instagram, and a Twitter. And I'm going to show you some pictures and a couple of examples of stories that we've done that we think are adding to the body of knowledge, to the quality of information. And then point 3, the other thing that the Media Project does is we're an education and training organization. So we have, you can see at the bullet points below, we have several different training programs that normally happen each year. The Coaching and Leadership Fellowship at the Poynter Institute in Florida for mid-career journalists that we fly 15 journalists every year to Florida for that at the Poynter Institute. We have a program at, like the photo I showed you earlier, in Prague called the European Journalism Institute. We operate with partners in Prague, and a lot more younger journalists attend to that. We have the Latin America Journalism Institute which happens in Santiago, Chile, normally, and we had to postpone that this year. We've done this at Finisterra and with other universities collaborating to help train young journalists in Chile, and hopefully we get more and more from the region coming to that program each year. We have a couple of programs in Africa, Africa Journalism Institute, the Asia Pacific Journalism Institute in Indonesia each year, and we have a partnership in New York where NYC Semester in Journalism, where students can come for one semester and learn journalism. So what makes us different than a lot of other nonprofits, that there's great nonprofits that help international journalists and champion the values of good journalism, but very few focus on how do we cover religion. And it's important because, you know, in the United States, we're a rather religious society. Pew Research shows 70%, 80% of Americans identify as religious in some way. It's a big part of people's lives. And meanwhile, media tends to not cover religion very well or very thoroughly, or the way people live it. Media tends to cover religion only with a lens of conflict between people or between religions, etc., when it's actually a stabilizing and rich part of people's lives, and there should be other ways we show that part of society. And if we go to Latin America or we go to Africa, we see, you know, both the data and the lived experience shows us that it's even more important. It's even, you know, it's as powerful or more important in these societies than in the United States. So we think it's an important overlooked area, and most of the scholars and media in the United States agree that religion reporting is very important, and we need to do it. It's not easy, but we need to do it. And so our organization exists to help on that front, and we're one of the few out there, I think, that's doing it, both by training as well as doing, and having a platform where people can do. So here's a picture from our Poynter. I'm going to show you now what I mean. So here's a picture from our 2017 Poynter Coaching and Leadership Fellows in Florida at the Poynter Institute. And in this photo, I see wonderful people from Trinidad, I see people here from Venezuela, I believe from Poland, from Ecuador, from Cameroon, from Ghana, from Czech Republic. And I see three gentlemen from India. The gentleman on the front row in the white is Thomas. His background was Catholic, by the way, and he's a radio journalist in India. His colleague in a peach shirt in the second row with glasses and white hair is Sanjeev, and he's also a radio journalist and from a mixed faith background, Hindu Catholic family background. And then the journalist right in the center with the red plaid shirt is Zafar. He's from Kashmir. He's a TV journalist. And these guys all got along. And we all were able to discuss how do we do journalism. So people from sort of three main religions, but in the same country, became friends. And we all became friends. And we learned how can we report on religions in a professional way. And as we get to know each other, we hear people's stories. So Zafar, midway through the week that we had together, he said, you guys might have noticed, at a dinner he told us this, he stood up and said, you guys might have noticed this bump on my nose and wondered what it was. And what it is was that when I was 24 years old, you know, in my early 20s, in my first job out of graduate school in Kashmir in a newsroom, militants came to my office looking for my boss. They thought I was the boss, because I had the same name as him, and they decided to shoot me through the legs and also through the back of the head, and the bullet went through my brain, and it came out my nose right here where you can see this mark. And he described what that was like. He described standing up and looking at the wall and seeing your own blood and brain matter on the wall, and crumpling to the floor. He described the hospital and you know, remembers being told you're not going to walk again, probably, you know, definitely not do journalism again. Meanwhile, months later, he recovered. He was speaking again, walking again, and was back in a newsroom. And he's a courageous person. And he, in fact, he said he didn't tell, when he was interviewing for new jobs, he wouldn't tell them what had happened to them because he didn't want to be discriminated against. We exist to serve journalists like Zafar who are doing important work, who are telling stories, who are bringing quality information to the world. In fact, he writes for our site fairly regularly from Kashmir, and I'm going to show you some of our Kashmir coverage. Our site, religionunplugged.com, like I said, an online magazine and a twice a month podcast. It's about religion. We try to write stories on culture, politics, all kinds of things, but look for where it connects to religion. And again, you can follow our website, sign up for headlines by email there, or also follow us on Twitter @religionmag. Here's the front of the site, what it looks like. And you can see that we have stories from Nigeria, from Kenya. This is from, the screenshot was from a while ago, 2019. Stories from Indonesia, Pakistan. So we have these great reports coming in from around the world. I want to talk about one story we did a week or so ago. And as you know, our country we're having protests because social media allowed us to see the story of a man's death. People filmed police arresting George Floyd in Minnesota, as you know, and what I consider police brutality or actions that were not appropriate that led to his death. And this has rocked our country. We have hundreds of thousands, millions of people protesting in the streets. We're seeing a big shift, maybe a tectonic shift in terms of our thinking about race and injustice because we have more knowledge. It's key, though, the quality of information that we're seeing about George Floyd or about what happened or about the protests is where do we know it's high quality? Well, our site tried to contribute, and I think we did in a big way. So Liza is a young journalist who works with our site, and right as the story was breaking, she was following it on social media and realized that George Floyd had a religious angle to his life. He had some difficulties in his life early on. He grew up in public housing projects or spent time there, but at points in his life, he had mentors, he had friends who helped him, a pastor, and these people started sharing photos and talking about the real George Floyd and his efforts to do good in the world and his efforts to talk about faith and to try to help others, to try to help younger people. And so Liza, our journalist, did a Zoom call with those friends, the pastor, etc., which you can find on our YouTube channel, and then reported this story, which was one of two stories that told us this side of George Floyd. And why I think that's important is if we only see George Floyd as a victim and a political symbol, we're missing out on the true story of who he was and his humanity. And so we helped show that. And strangely, we were one of the only, like I said, only media outlets that was able to show that. And our story was then republished at Newsweek and at Ministry Watch and at Religion News Service. So a lot of nonprofit news outlets like ours, we share our content. We make it available to other sites to republish. So we're providing quality information that others can use. And just as a coda, if you watch the funeral, there was a funeral to George Floyd this week, and we learned more again about the gospel music and the community and the spiritual side of this person. He wasn't just a physical being. We believe, and he believed he had a soul, a spirit, and that was important to show that side of that story. Okay, now I'm going to take you to Kashmir. Zafar, as I told you, Zafar is from Kashmir. He's been doing reports for us. We also have other journalists in India. And when, I believe it was last year, when the government of India, there's been long clashing, as we know, over Kashmir between Pakistan and India and who has ownership, etc. And India made some moves, was shutting down the internet. It became a more contested region, and people were suffering. And we had reports on the ground because of our network. We had Zafar writing stories. We also had journalists from other parts of India, photojournalists who went to Kashmir to do reporting. And they got to Kashmir last fall at the time of the worst protests. In fact, we were the only outlet, I'm told, that covered this protest on this particular day. And it was dangerous for our journalists, but they documented women were out protesting, getting hit with tear gas, as you see. Young children were coming out to be part of the protests, writing pleas on signs to foreign leaders. People who had been injured in previous protests were coming out in solidarity. Again, young kids don't normally be part of protests there, but they were that particular day. And our journalists were pushed. They were in this line of rocks being thrown, that kind of thing, but they felt it was important to be there and to be a witness to what was happening. A lot of young people, young men, lose their eyesight when they're hit by pellets, rubber bullets, BB guns, whatever is being used by the crowd control forces. And we got this image that I find chilling. And I think this is part of what journalists do when they do it well, is they're a witness to events, and they put it in context as well. So our story put these photos in context. And our ongoing coverage about Kashmir helped put this story in context. And here we are, a small player, but we have an incredible network around the world, and we're able to source stories that help our knowledge, help provide quality of information. So that's a look at what we're doing at Religion Unplugged, some of my work there. My main job, I'm a college professor at King's College in New York, and so that's my main job. But then I have the nonprofit I just told you about. And then I also, every once in a while, if I have an idea, I'd like to build stuff. So I'm going to talk to you about for-profit startups and what I'm building. Vet News is my startup project. Vet, by the way, is a Swedish word that means savvy. We aim to make citizens more savvy about what they read and to make publishers more transparent with the public. To do that, we create software as a service tools that improve the infrastructure for digital trust for publishers. So our CX tool is a workflow automation system that improves the correction process for publishers and thereby improves the accuracy of news content on a publisher's website and on the internet. The problem we are solving is that public trust in the news media is at a historic low. Pew Research found 68% of Americans say they lack confidence in news organizations' willingness to admit when they made a mistake. The Knight Foundation found in 2018 that nearly 90% of citizens said their trust in news organizations depend on the outlet's willingness to openly correct mistakes. We spoke to dozens of high school, college, and professional newsrooms, and 98% admitted that their corrections process is clunky and told us they would like a better tool to improve their relationships to readers. So I spent 10 years as a staff writer at the Wall Street Journal before switching into academia as a journalism professor. When I was a reporter, if I made a mistake spelling your name or on a fact about your company, you might call me or email me or my editor, and those requests often get lost and are subsequently not made. Such requests bounce around a newsroom and eat up valuable time from too many staff members. News organizations often don't have a central place to receive and track correction requests, and the experience doesn't feel good for the reader or the journalist. It's a missed opportunity to improve the accuracy of the news report, to thank, reward, and engage the reader for participating in that process. So we knew there was a better way for publishers to improve credibility with the public. Since at least the 1950s, corrections have involved a fairly standardized process. It's just a matter of collecting the right data. Our tool allows newsrooms to collect the data in the format they need by involving the public and condensing the information into our centralized dashboard. Our team installs a small block of code, the length of a tweet, into a publisher's content management system. The code surfaces a button at the bottom of every article and invites reader feedback and correction requests. When you fill out a correction request, the data is structured into a way newsrooms need it. The requests then move to the CX dashboard. Our customers, our publishers, log into our dashboard to respond and engage with a large number of loyal readers. This tool provides a more efficient way to manage this feedback at scale. It improves the accuracy of the content. It strengthens brand loyalty and trust. It reduces newsroom liability by documenting and speeding up response to complaints. It boosts pathways for membership and subscription revenue. So News, magazine, and digital ads represented a $404 billion business in 2019, according to McKinsey and Co. Newspapers globally represented a $109 billion market for advertising and $26 billion in the US alone, according to the same study. Our target market are news publishers with digital sites, including newspapers, TV stations, radio stations, and digital-first news organizations. That total addressable market may be as high as 800 million globally or 100 million in the US for the product. But the adjacent market includes any publisher that's concerned about the accuracy of their content and the relationship to their audience online. So that could be academic publishers, think tanks, academic institutions, large corporations with publications. So our current pricing structure will be very simple. $15 a month for small publishers and up to $1,500 a month for larger ones. And if anybody's interested, we're happy to talk. We've got the tech built, and we are ready to install. We received a $75,000 grant last October from the Knight Foundation to build and test our product this year. We've built it and we're testing it on 3 sites right now, and we're lining up more test partners this summer. So again, we're demonstrating the product for initial enterprise customers. We're installing it on partners, and we believe the data from our initial users will drive ongoing enterprise sales as the product gains traction. So reach out if you want to test our product and use it. Our team, we've got a dynamite team of journalists, academics, technologists who've spent time working for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Daily News, and abcnews.com. Some of our advisors include the former head of corrections at the New York Times and a former FCC chairman in the US. So we are proud to be working on a solution to improve media literacy and the engagement between news media and the public. We would like to continue to align with creative leaders and publishers as we grow our business and our product. So we welcome your help. And I hope you can see that these are just 2 projects that one journalism professor in New York is doing to help the future of news and information, to help build a future that focuses on quality. And I thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions. I'm looking through the questions now. Okay, let's see here. Dear Paul, what is the role for News Insight in ad strategy and vice versa? How can we turn an ad into news? That's interesting. I would think some of Pancho or others might have good thoughts on this, because I actually think we need to be careful personally. I think we need to deliver news that's news, and if it is advertising acting as news, we need to label it as advertising or sponsored content. Sponsored content is one business model that some news organizations are using, like Vice or BuzzFeed. There's a brand studio at Vice called Virtue. I have a student who works there. So those are interesting business models, but I think increasingly the public needs transparency. The public needs quality of information. It needs to be labeled. So I'd say go for it, but label it. Let's see here. Okay, some other good questions. Let me pick 1 or 2 more. Interesting. Richard Brand writes, way to go. When you can't stir up dissension, bring religion into the mix. You're being played. You know what? Richard, I think the whole world, like I said, is more religious. So those people who are, if you're not religious, that's fine. And maybe there's stories about atheist communities, etc. But religion is important to people's lives, and I don't think we should ignore it. I think good journalism covers the totality of people's lives, and religion is a topic in universities and grad schools. So I think I don't think it's very enlightened to think that religion is just dissension. I think it's the way we cover religion. And I think if we're just doing stories about dissension in religion and that's all we cover, then you get more dissension. But if we learn how to cover positive, solution-oriented stories as well as ones with conflict, that's a better way. So I would encourage you to, think about your question and go deeper and consider what is good coverage of this. Consider what other people are thinking. That's what I think media can do well. Quick responses: COVID-19, final shot for the newspaper. I don't know. Some people think so, but I think definitely it's hurting news more the way it's hurting a lot of other industries more. Okay, all the brands are supporting Floyd's cause. Yeah, a lot of brands here in the U.S. are supporting Floyd's cause. In fact, we get lots of emails in our inboxes, and maybe it's in wherever you are. You get emails, stating your support, the way your organization thinks about these issues. So it's a really galvanizing moment, and one that is causing people to think. I think the question is, will it be window dressing, or will it be real? Will brands do things differently after this? So that's quite something to think about. I appreciate these questions. We've hit the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to close. I'm going to end the video. Thank you to Inbrax and Pancho. Excellent man, excellent friend, and I appreciate the invitation. One more question has popped in. How do fake news affect the credibility of the press? Well, fake news, that's a big topic, and I'll just give a quick answer. Fake news is a term, I think, used and weaponized by political leaders, and that has affected the credibility of the press, the battle we've seen between some political leaders and the press. Fake news also refers to newsrooms making mistakes. And I will say that newsrooms, like all humans, make mistakes. Good newsrooms make fewer mistakes, and they own their mistakes. Good news outlets let their readers know, hey, we made a mistake and here's what it was. And when you confront them with the mistake, and that's what my platform allows to happen even better. Vet News allows you, the citizens, to point out factual errors that were happening at a news outlet. So we've created a mechanism to improve the credibility of the press and to showcase the press that does already have credibility and allow them to live it more. So thanks again. Appreciate the questions. Appreciate the audience. Have a wonderful rest of your day.